All right, we are live and welcome to Vlog Thursday 273.
Wow.
I got Chris from Crosstalk Solutions here.
Who was also coincidentally on Vlog Thursday number 1.
Oh, yeah.
It's been a long time.
Been a
No,
minute.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you were on. It's been a while, and this is completely my fault. One of my other friends had messaged me and said, I haven't heard from you in a while. I'm like, oh, I'm still here. I completely never think, like, if Chris doesn't say something for a while, it's not that I'm ignoring people. It's just I'm not the best person at being social.
Yeah, listen, well, everyone's got their own little lives. They've got their own bubble. I'm exactly the same. I need to reach out to friends more often than I do. I actually just reconnected with some friends this year that I hadn't been connected with in a while, and that was really good. We went down to Los Angeles and had a nice barbecue with a bunch of people I hadn't seen in ages, and it's always fun, It's great.
Yeah, I thought, one of those podcasts I listen to from time to time, usually get more guest driven, is like Jordan Harbinger's show.
Mhm.
And I actually did part of his class. He does it's free class. He just talks about how to connect with people. It turns out he's a hacker nerd. And so
Yeah.
he has some problems with that, but he talks about how you put it into a procedure and how you set it in a schedule. And he goes, I know it sounds like you're forcing yourself to be social, but it actually helps a little bit. And I've started to slowly do that where, okay, if I haven't talked to this person in 30 days, I should at least just say hello.
Yeah, right.
So as well as, part of being a nerd.
It's part of it. I don't know. I feel like maybe not so much in like the network administration side of things, but I know that it takes like very specific types of people to do specific jobs in IT.
Yeah.
And so someone who's a network engineer has generally, obviously there's exceptions to every rule, but someone who's a network engineer generally is going to be a little bit more social and outgoing than someone who's like a hardcore developer, say.
Yeah.
In my opinion, it seems like developers are more of the sort of introverts, like head down, focused on the computer only for, 15 hours at a time. And at least with network stuff, we kind of get our hands on the equipment and, sort of get to walk around a little bit and plug things in and unplug things.
We interact with people and things like that. But then there's
Yeah.
the back-end engineers that just do the magic remotely. Those guys, sometimes I have a couple of my employees, they're really quiet. They're not, someone's like, why aren't they ever on YouTube channel? I'm like, there's reasons.
Some people don't want to be on YouTube. Like, I know you've had your wife on YouTube. Like,
Yeah.
My wife wants nothing to do with YouTube whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like not even,
she's
not
like,
even a question.
Yeah, she likes doing the she'll read the questions and type back to people because I don't always type back to them, things like that. But we have a few people that joined, and we'll say hi to Cody from Mac Telecom Networks. He's a fellow UniFi lover like me and Chris.
Yeah, getting into those UniFi talk videos, delving into the UniFi talk space.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm not that interested in it. People ask me about it, and I'm like, I don't know. What's your take on it, Chris?
It's not, well, okay, so to be fair, I have only given it the briefest of sort of overview look. I've only looked at it very briefly.
Mm-hmm.
I've tried to set it up. I had some phones here. I had mixed success. Some of the phones were too old to connect to the newest versions of software and stuff. But I've been in voice over IP and phone systems for coming up on 20 years, probably. And the one thing that I've found is that you'll never find a real vanilla VoIP configuration. There's so many people want so many different things to tailor their phone system around the way that they do business that I don't feel that UniFi Talk is robust enough to cover everyone's needs. If as a VoIP integrator, I was going to try to sell it to customers, you'd have to sell it to very specific customers that can fit within the UniFi Talk mold. And kind of that's it.
Yeah, I think that's, you being the free PBX expert, that's the cool thing about like free PBX is it has an immense amount of flexibility for all the different things, in even like some of the projects we've coordinated on it, I've kind of contracted out to you for free PBX. Some of these are some unusual steps people have with different manufacturing things that ring bells and things like that. I mean, it's all that little one-off stuff that no one always thinks about, but is more prevalent than you realize in the voice of PBX stage. And always, you do a lot of the hospitality, and there's an entire use case and sets of things that you go, oh, that's right. I am used to my phone just kind of doing a thing in the hotel room. That does have some magic behind it and some technology to make that actually functional.
Yeah, there's very specific, there's a lot of specific things that we run across per segment. Like schools usually have very similar needs as far as those extra types of bells and whistles, paging systems and whatnot, versus hospitals or auto dealerships. They all kind of have their own sort of nuances. So we know what questions to ask. But like if you're dealing with an auto dealership and they want to have a loudspeaker that plays out over their entire yard, or they want to have, they've got a factory or a mechanics wherever they work on the cars. What am I trying to say? A bay?
The garage bay.
The garage, the bay. Where like if this phone rings, I also want a separate loud ringer in that same bay or in that same garage so that we know when the phone's ringing. Like there's just little things like that that are much more difficult to do when you're boxed into proprietary phones and a smaller set of features, if you will.
Yeah, there's like the general law office type thing where there's maybe a person secretary answering the phone and passing it off, but that's actually the big one, the complicated ones. That's, so to speak, the ones where you can't apply this. And then if you're a reseller, okay, how many things do you want in your reseller stack? Because hold on, if you're super basic, I can sell you this, but everything else I got to sell you this. Well, I may as well just sell you the more complicated one all the time, so I only got one product to support.
Right. And you just don't use all the features on that. So that's kind of what we do. I mean, we have we try to make things as cookie cutter as possible. But did you hear about the possible Yealink phone backdoor?
No.
Oh, so this is crazy. There's an article. Is there a chat that I can send this to you?
Yeah. There's click on the private chat on that and I'll pull it up.
All right, let's see. I'm going to send you this article.
While you're doing that, I'll say it. We got a hello from Sweden, hello from Germany, Australia. I like to see all the different countries where people are saying
hi. Welcome, everybody. All right, so there's this article. And the long and the short of it is that Yealink phones are a Chinese manufacturer. Whoop, what am I getting, a call? Oh, I'm getting a call on Discord in my ear. Hang on, let me tell my guy that I'm on a live stream.
No problem. So let's see. Say the rest of the thank you, William Daughtery, who also says he is a developer, but actually social. So thank you for the super chat and and being someone who's learned to be socially said. So
I can't drink tequila though, William. Sorry about that.
Yeah, we'll buy whiskey with it. So
there you go. I can do whiskey or bourbon. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this was an interesting article. It's a good read. It came out a while ago, but this company, this security company, basically found that Yealink phones phone home to China every time they're rebooted, and if they're not rebooted, once a day, even if you have them on a different redirect server.
I had a little ad blocker.
Yeah, and it's encrypted, so we really don't know what they're sending back, but the potential there is kind of interesting because Yealink is very popular. I mean, it runs on like, I mean, a good percentage. I don't know the percentage offhand, but I would guess probably 15-20% of all phone systems in the US utilize Yealink phones.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because that phone home, the worst case scenario is that phoning home could potentially be requesting or they could signal these phones to install some sort of new firmware, maybe that, bricks every Yealink phone in the United States.
Yeah, here's one of the challenges with any of these, and this has come up quite a few times. A lot of the firmware, like if you read the British, what's the British intelligence agency, GCC or something like that. I forget the name. When they did the debrief on the Huawei stuff, I actually really liked some of the stuff they put in the report. They said it's so bad. Some of their coding practices were using stuff that was so old and outdated. They were still coding in languages that had vulnerabilities, frameworks that were old. They said, we can't tell if this is intentional or just a terribly run code house. We don't know if they're just that bad and they're trying to put backdoors in, or what it really looks like is they're just inept and no one has moved on. Like there's a couple guys that know this old framework from 6 years ago and no one ever updated anything. We're still building with Java version 2. Let's just keep going, folks. Like,
right. Yeah, I mean it's a similar type of thing, and it's to the point where
DHQ. Some people figured it out. There we go.
It's a thing where like no one really knows what might be happening with these Yealink phones, but that's the problem, right? The problem is you don't know what's happening with them.
Right. The opaqueness of a lot of these is a big problem.
Yeah. And you know, they're you know, part of the their board of directors are people that have been you know, big in the PRRC, and it sort of gets to like this, like, you know, without getting too like xenophobic, is this actually a problem? You know, like,
well, and there's a solution to any of these problems. It comes back down to like open source, open code, understanding what's in there. Give us the, I think it's called like the SBOM, the software bill of software build manifest. I don't know if you've seen some of these proposals that companies have to start telling us all the crap that went into their system so we know the interdependencies of it, because the perfect example is Log4j. What was or what wasn't built with Log4j? We don't know. We just see a product and we're using it, but what dependencies did you have? And once things become more open source, we can see it. Okay, we can decide whether or not you're doing something nefarious with it, because we're able to dive into it. So the push for that comes up every time there's a big incident, but like all bureaucracy, it goes back into the bureaucracy mess. And here we are seeing backdoors in phones.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's concerning enough where we are still selling Yealink phones, but we are also sort of caveating this article to our customers that are asking about them and saying, look, they're good phones. Like that's the problem, is they're really good phones and they work well. But so when people ask about them, especially schools and stuff, we got to say, listen, we do resell Yealink and we like Yealink phones. They work well. They're awesome. They're built well. But there's this asterisk out there that we're not really sure about. So just here, check out this article. Just want to make sure you have all of the information, you know, and we make sure we're very clear about that when we're selling phones to customers.
Yeah. Grayson has a question here. Is there any problems locking phones down on a separate VLAN where they don't have internet access, or doesn't that cause some other issues with some of these phones? Do they kind of require more than just NTP? They usually want to reach out, don't they?
Yeah. So a voice over IP network can be segregated with no internet access. The server needs internet access. Right. So the server would typically be what is downloading all of the, you know, new firmware files, and then the phones just connect to the server. So you could theoretically set it up to do that. That would mean, though, that you are locking yourself into not using any sort of cloud redirect server, which is very popular these days. However, the older technologies still work. Most phones, you know, before the cloud provisioning servers were super popular, everything was TFTP, and everything still works with TFTP. So yeah, you can absolutely do it.
As long as you have an on-prem server, which not everybody has an on-prem server.
Not everybody has an on-prem server. That's right. So if you have an on-prem server, you can segregate everything, only allow the server to talk to the internet. And then even, you know, block IP addresses outbound if you want to, or block regions outbound if you want to. And that would work.
Yeah.
But we don't do that often. It's very rare. Most of our stuff these days are cloud services.
And that's where some of these challenges come in, is if you even have full control of the network, you may be just selling them part of a solution. You can make an advisement to who does manage your firewall, but if that's not you, well, I'm not going to not sell it to you.
Right.
So, there's always so much more nuance than people, once you get into it, when you start looking at it from the outside, but once you've been doing this for a while, like me and Chris have, and boy, we've both been in the consulting game for a long time. So we've seen a lot, and we know we don't always get to pick all of the details the way we want.
We at one point, you know, you learn as you go, and we had to add into our contracts for phone systems at one point that, what is included in the service and what is not included in the service. And one thing that is not included in the service is any network configuration at all, right? So like basically saying like, look, we're selling you a phone system, but if we put this phone system in and your network is blocking something, or you've got double NAT, or you've got one-way audio, or you've got a firewall that's not really compatible, we try to sort of stem off all that stuff off at the front. But if we put it in and the network's not working, we don't want to be on the hook for making your network work as part of this project that's the phone system, not related to the network, right? So we'll say, look, we will consult with you on the network stuff if you want, but that's going to have to be separate. And that's just something that we had to build in to a contract. Like we just had to put that in because otherwise it'll bite us in the butt.
The longer you've been in business is proportional to how big your scope of work is in your do's and don'ts in your contract.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Yeah. So someone says, and you already said it here, is double NAT still a big issue for VoIP phones if you have on an on-premise server? I mean, not if you have an on-prem server, but you have to make sure that whatever firewall you're using can handle, and that you've also configured proper NAT. There's ways to do this. There's protocols that handle it now, but there's still exceptions to the way they're set up. And it comes down to who your SIP trunking provider is upstream, whether or not they handle it properly. Because that's sometimes where the problem is too. There's not just configuring a free PBX box or whichever on-prem voice server. It's the negotiation between the SIP trunking.
Yeah, we don't like, we avoid double NAT. We also avoid customers that their primary internet connection is a wireless ISP.
Ooh, yeah.
Because there's just no, voice over IP is a real-time protocol.
Yep.
If you're surfing a web page or you're downloading a YouTube video, there's buffers. It can retry. TCP is error correcting, so to speak. So you can't put a word back into a sentence that you've spoken.
Yeah, it's gone.
Yeah,
those packets got dropped there.
Right.
Yeah. So nothing we can do about those. Have you been following, or do you use Atlassian at all?
No, I don't.
They just released the debrief. I don't know if you've seen. So I because we talk about documentation from time to time on my channel, and we run into a lot of documentation servers, including a client that one of our clients literally rebuilds a bunch of Atlassian work. Anyways, Atlassian went down a couple days into April, and they're still down today for a big part of their system. Yeah, they finally did the debrief. They ran a maintenance script. And apparently this is their own admission. They didn't coordinate with a couple different teams. And instead of a maintenance pruning script, it turned into a maintenance purging script, and it purged several thousand customers. And their restore is going to take them up to 3 to 4 weeks because they can only restore 60 at a time. That's the limit for so they have backups. It's this weird problem that people don't realize of, could you get the backups there? I can back up a single site, and I can restore a single site. I can restore a dozen sites. I can restore 60 sites is apparently their answer. But we deleted like 10,000 sites or whatever the number was pretty staggering. I don't remember exactly what it was, pretty big. And this is one of those cloud problems. A lot of people is, I just was reading this and tweeting about it just before I got online here. I figured I'd bring this up because I think I talked about it last week of how long it takes to get some of these done. It's always interesting to think about the backups because we do, disaster recovery planning. And we did a DR test with a client, which it turned out, because of their slow internet, the simulation of the restore, we gave them how long they'd be down for was 3 days just to download the file again. We're like, that's just the speed of your internet connection right now because of the data accumulation you have. They're like, oh, so we'd be down for 3 days. Yep. Simulation. After we let it run for so many hours, we calculated it and confirmed the transmission stream back is working. You will be restored at this demo server in 3 days at your connection.
Wow.
They're like, that's a lot of downtime because they have like 90 employees. They're like, what do they do in the meantime? I said, I don't know. Give them a few days off.
Yeah. Have fun.
Yeah. It's one of those things you have to always think about when you're doing these disaster recovery plannings and putting that. It was just, I figured the audience might like to hear about this because everyone tries to crap on the cloud. And I'm like,
yeah.
Figuring out how to back up the cloud, I think, is the challenge.
It can be tough. Yeah. I've got like, even for home users, the way that I back up is I have all of my documents and videos and music and everything on my NAS. And then my NAS is just connected as a drive on my system. I've got my, documents, music, etc., folders mapped to the NAS drive. The NAS drive backs up to both an external hard drive, just a USB connected hard drive here on premises, and then also to what's the backup? Backblaze.
Backblaze.
So
Okay.
also to Backblaze, and then separately, I have the Synology NAS doing Google Docs backups on site as well. So
Me
it's
too.
like you just have to that's how you got to do it. You got to really dial that in, and it's a pain in the butt to set up. But typically, once it's set up, it's pretty set it and forget it.
So I'm impressed with how well Synology handles the Google backup. It's easier because we actually do, we set up for clients with the Office 365 ones. Those are actually relatively easy. The Google ones, the API makes it a little bit because you have to do like individual API authorizations and get some keys. It's been a little while since we set it up, but I remember there being we've done a couple of them, and they're always, Google's a little bit trickier, but Google has granular permissions. Like you have to grant access to each section. But
Right.
I'm impressed with how well it works because I did finally have, I mean, I've tested a little bit, like, but I'm testing it. It's not a surprise. Like when accidentally when your employee says, I may have deleted some really important things out of the calendar.
Right.
And I was like, that's interesting. He goes,
Yeah.
tell me there's a copy in your calendar, Tom. I said, no, you deleted them out of our shared calendar. And so we got to test it the other day, and it worked flawlessly. Actually, I was able to push the calendar settings. I don't know if you looked how you push things back, you can push them back right through the Synology interface, and they showed right back up for everybody. The shared calendar.
It's really slick.
Yeah, it's a really nice system. It's a great platform.
I mean, Synology, like NAS systems, Synology type NAS systems are almost like mandatory now for home users. Like there's just so much you can do with it. Check out this one that I just linked you to, though. I just saw this. I think it just came out from QNAP. I use Synology personally, but I've played with QNAP, and I think it's a viable solution. I like QNAP stuff. But look at this one they just came out with. This is made for multimedia playback. It's got 2 drives that you put in there. It's silent, and it's got I think dual 2.5 gig ports on it. It's got dual 2.5 gig Ethernet and dual 4K HDMI 2 output.
Oh, that's kind of neat.
Yeah, right? Isn't that cool?
So my love-hate with QNAP has been, I agree with a lot of people's comments when they say they make good hardware. And this is a really nice piece of hardware, but their patching is always so lagged behind when they carry on security updates. I don't know if they've even released like the Linux dirty pipe. Now, granted, they build it on Linux, so it's not their fault. It's not a direct QNAP problem, but to take 3 weeks, 2 weeks later, and they're still saying, hey, we're completely aware of the problem. Sorry, we haven't got firmware out yet.
Yeah.
Like they need to prioritize that a little better. Obviously, the kind of workaround for this from a security standpoint is don't put these things online publicly accessible. But then again, even Synology, if I had to guess, Chris, your Synology isn't publicly accessible online, right?
No, of course not.
That's the bigger problem, is all these things that are publicly accessible is don't make them. But yeah, it's kind of clever that it's got the multimedia right on there, so like hook it right up to your TV. Okay.
Yeah, and it's like, I think that's basically what it's made for. I thought it was a kind of an interesting product. QNAP does have good hardware. Like the hardware that they come out with is usually pretty innovative, and that's kind of what I like about them.
That I didn't watch it yet, but a lot of people have asked me about it, so I'm glad Wendell from Level 1 did a video. But you can run other NAS software on there. They run Linux. Matter of fact, he specifically was putting TrueNAS on them. So some people have talked about like some of the nicer QNAP ones, you can get more functionality out of them, or functionality maybe you like better out of TrueNAS. So they will run third-party software. So you can take advantage of that hardware, which their hardware is good price. And there's an alternative where you have a supported operating system, maybe something, maybe you like better, and still take advantage of the hardware. It's all x86. It's not that proprietary. So there's just some trickiness to getting it to overwrite the QNAP, but once you've done it, away you go.
Yeah. It's like OpenWRT for for NAS systems.
Yeah, I haven't played with that in a while. A few people have asked me about that. So
I haven't either. It's been a long time. I still have, like, I've got I tend to not throw anything out. So I've got like a bin upstairs. Like I use like those storage bins, and I've got one storage bin that's literally full to the brim of just old routers, like Netgear, Linksys, Cisco, I've got like an old like Cisco Pix firewall, one of those small ones from like way back in the day, like 10100 interface, you know, like and I just, for some reason, I just can never throw any of that stuff out. I always keep it because, you know, someday I might need it.
The WRT 54G, man, that thing was a classic. I had that for so long. I love that one.
Yeah, that was sort of the
first one I ever had
mainstay in home networking for years and years and years. It's probably why Cisco bought them. You know what I mean? Like, it was such a popular device. You know, I was watching, you know, last week you and I did that that live stream on the Ubiquiti Suze Krebs thing. Yeah. And I don't know if you saw that the WAN show just covered it earlier this week as well. So, you know, Linus Tech Tips. And they brought up the point that, like, Ubiquiti was such a disruptor in a really good way in the sort of prosumer networking space. And, like, they're kind of like blowing all that goodwill with all of this stuff. And I thought that was a really good point that they made, is that it's hard to imagine going back to the pre-Ubiquiti home network days.
Yes.
You know, because they've really spurred all of this. You know, like, Meraki kind of was, I guess, probably the first one that was sort of SDN. But then, like, they've now come out with everything, you know, the service side of it is free, and everyone else is having to follow suit because of that. You know, Aruba and TP-Link and what's the other? Ruckus Unleashed, right? Like, all of these are now, like, you don't have to pay the recurring license fees anymore. Yep. And I think a lot of that is directly because of the popularity of Ubiquiti hardware.
Yeah, because it's almost like a how'd you want to call it, a collusion between them. Is like, hey, everyone, you know, they all know each other. Come on, and everyone at least charge a license fee, because I'm charging one, you're charging one. This is how we're all going to make money, right?
Right.
And then Open Mesh came out, and they were one of the first big competitors. But right away with Open Mesh, I didn't like it. There wasn't a self-hosted controller, and I'm like, the cloud is never free forever. Sorry, that isn't how it works. And then Datto bought Open Mesh, and then they violated that cloud free forever deal, going, oh yeah, by the way, you can sign up for the Datto Open Mesh cloud. It does have a subscription fee to it. And I tried out. We deployed only a couple of them for testing, and we deployed some Ubiquiti. But right away, like, the Ubiquiti clicked with me better, and that would have been around, I don't know, 2013 maybe, a long time ago. But that self-hosted controller, that was the thing. I'm like, this is great. I can control this. This is, like, so much better than what I'm seeing out there. And Meraki, which is now Meraki Cisco, Meraki was an independent company. They were, like you said, one of the first in the game doing this before they got bought up by Cisco doing it. I guess there's still, and I didn't know this, and you deal more with them, I don't know if as much anymore. Cambium, don't they have a self-hosted controller as well, or an option for one?
They do,
but it's not clear from looking at their site exactly how it works.
Cambium has a marketing problem, is the way that I would put it. They don't market their gear well. I mean, it was always, like, their stuff works really well. It's definitely a steeper learning curve to set up. It's not made for prosumer. It's made for
network engineers.
Yeah, WISPs and network engineers, right? So it's not quite as user-friendly. It does a lot of the same stuff, but their products just aren't. I mean, again, you know, they say, like, something has that it factor, or a certain, you know, je ne sais quoi, right? Cambium doesn't have that, and Ubiquiti does. Ubiquiti products are sexy.
Yeah.
And Cambium products are not, right? A lot of these products are not. Like, but at least, you know, like with other products that I wouldn't consider as sexy as Ubiquiti products, like TP-Link Omada products is a good example. You know, they got those big old access points, and, you know, a lot of people complain about the size, and they just don't look very sleek. But their pricing's a lot better, and the functionality's there, right? So, you know, it just comes down to, like, usability and the actual aesthetics of the device. Cambium just sort of falls flat on both of those items, and price. They're not that cheap.
No.
And so that's where they kind of, like, they don't keep up. They don't keep up with everything.
I remember when I was talking to them, like, I remember you could get the CN Maestro that seemed to have integration with their Wi-Fi, but I was really not clear on how it integrated with their switches, or if it did at all. And that, and their switches were also they were as expensive, if not more, than the Cisco's. So I'm like, you
They
guys
were,
are,
yeah.
this is not a competitive price. You're charging Cisco prices, but you're just not as clear. At least Cisco's clear on what it does.
Yeah. Cambium had, I did a number of Cambium videos, and they hit me up at one point to, they wanted me to promote their, they came out with a line of switches specifically for video surveillance. And I asked them, I said, well, okay, so what makes these video surveillance switches? And they really didn't have a great answer, or they did have a couple of things. Like there was a way that you could view the RTSP feed of a camera from inside the GUI of the switch, like something like that, right? But other than that, there really wasn't much. And I ultimately turned them down. I said, guys, this is not that interesting. Like it's just a switch. It's just a very expensive switch that you're calling a surveillance switch without a lot to really kind of back it up.
Yeah, it was weird. I remember I had similar conversations with them a few times. I'm like, I just can't understand completely what you guys are getting at here. Like, I'm just like, they just keep missing it. Like, I see that they're trying, and I don't think they have a terrible product. The marketing problem with it. And Ruckus is kind of the same way. Ruckus's website's not helpful last time I was there. Like, it's to understand their product offering. And the same thing with Aruba. Whoa. I had a college reach out to me, and I thought this was interesting. Did you know Aruba has a self-hosted controller system?
You mean Instant-On?
Oh, it's kind of like that. It's on the same Aruba lineup. You have to. So this was so weird. They reached out to me, a DM of your Twitter, turned into a good conversation. They say, I seen your video about this like a year ago when I was talking about UniFi alternatives. And they go, actually, Aruba has it, but you won't find that out easily without the right sales rep. I'm like, oh, you got my interest piqued. So we ended up having a chat, and he said, the school's requirement was to have an on-prem controller, which pretty much he thought they were going to put in UniFi. And he goes, came up with one of the local IT places is an Aruba shop. And they're like, oh, no, go Aruba. And they're like, but self-hosted control. We don't want to have our infrastructure at this college campus tied to the cloud. Mm-hmm. And he said, no, we have a self-hosted controller for it. He's like, no, you don't. We can't find it on a website. And he goes, it's not on a website. And he kind of explained how it worked. It's really confusing. It's an enterprise thing. It has a big upfront cost, but it doesn't seem to have the recurring license. But you can't find it. And he said, that's actually the confusing part. It's the same problem with if you go through the Aruba APs, some of the Instant-On don't have on the access points web interfaces, and some do. But that's not like an easy to find matrix on their site to tell you which ones do and don't have web interfaces, and can only be managed in the cloud. And as you pointed out in your last Aruba videos, and the same thing when I tested them, the abilities of the switch when it's tied to the cloud are far less than when you log into the switch. You can configure all the extra features. So why do you guys have the cloud?
It's worse. It's worse than that, though. It's worse than that, because it's not like you can have it connected to Instant-On and then log into the switch and have all of those extra features. No. You have to choose which one you want when you factory reset the switch. You either get all the local GUI features, but no Instant-On, or you get the cloud connectivity and you don't get all the good features. I think I would actually personally be fine with it if most of the common features were controllable through Instant-On, and then anything extra that wasn't an Instant-On, you could still log into the switch and configure. That's not how it is. That's not how it works.
That is just a ridiculous config. Like, to me, that is puzzling. It always goes back to how these companies miss the mark. It's not like there's no example of a company as goofy as Ubiquiti can be at certain times. The other side of it is, how do they get it so right? And these companies like, hey, there's a blueprint of a company with a $12 billion market cap that's dominating the market. Like, just at least do what they do, because that's certainly what TP-Link did. They're like just looking at the homework on Ubiquiti. TP-Link, at least they copied most of the functionality of Ubiquiti.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I think that was like that old story of like, I think it was McDonald's and Burger King, where like in the US, two very popular fast food franchises. And I guess they're probably everywhere. Burger King's probably everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, they like the marketing of McDonald's location marketing or location scouting team would go around and run all sorts of metrics and spend ungodly amounts of money researching where's the best place to put new franchise locations. And Burger King's idea was, well, we're just going to put a Burger King near wherever a new McDonald's goes in.
Yeah. Like,
So like, that's the one way to do it,
Yeah. Just dumb as do what they do. Just build one across the street. It's easy than
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
Someone has a question. What is the preferred hypervisor? Someone like CSXI, also Proxmox. I'm partial to XCP-NG. We actually do a lot of consulting on that. So, but you have any preferences on hypervisor? You do much virtualization?
No, we don't do a lot of virtualization. Like I said, we are mostly just straight up networking and phone systems. We do run across occasionally folks that want to put their phone system into a virtual machine, which we typically recommend against. Not because it can't work, but because oftentimes the needs of a phone system in terms of especially networking and like sort of those double NAT issues that we were talking about, the networking has to be solid. And oftentimes folks setting up the virtual machines don't have the most in-depth knowledge of how to set it up properly. And so we kind of try to shy away from it. Again, not because it won't work, but because a lot of times people are like, oh, yeah, I'll just put it in a virtual machine, but they don't really know what they're doing. And then they have a very bad experience with free PBX. And then, of course, they blame the PBX. They don't blame the virtual machine setup.
Yeah, it's a chance. Same reason that I start with don't virtualize your pfSense installs or some of your firewalls. And it's not that you can't get it working. It's that you've added an entire new layer of things. And I did make a video on if you're going to do it, at least here's the procedures. Mm-hmm. I've actually helped with the XCP-NG, their documentation. I've gone through it and helped document. I think they have my video still embedded there to go over all the little details that you have to set. There's even certain parameters you have to push from the command line inside the hypervisor to set the networking to work exactly a certain way so you get better performance out of it. And only then will it maybe work if you don't have a Broadcom chip. And that's where the next performance problem is, because Broadcom makes awful chips. So if your hypervisor has 10 gig in it and you can't get 10 gig, you're sometimes even getting way less than 10 gig, you may have a Broadcom chip. So right. there's all these factors, and it's one of those things. If you're not familiar with it, or you're just trying to be budget friendly and I'm going to put everything in hypervisor because that's the efficient way, and make sure you built it on a solid platform so you're not troubleshooting a bunch of other things to go with it. I see someone here's any tips on Wi-Fi in an old thick-walled house, multiple Wi-Fi 6 or Wi-Fi 5.4? More the merrier is my opinion when it comes to some of the Wi-Fi. It's just hard to get through walls. Line of sight is going to be your best. Those little in walls, I even have those at my house because of my wife's office is like pushed forward into the house. And most of the time we're in the other part of the house. So the Wi-Fi 6 is over there. The in-wall HD is in her office. So her office things can all be connected. My wife moves her laptop around too much and she won't use hardwind because she says, no, I don't want one more wire on my desk because whatever.
Well, I mean, you think about it, like if you have a, concrete or brick walled house that is blocking the majority of your Wi-Fi signals, I mean, what's the problem? The problem is you have areas where you're not getting Wi-Fi coverage. So you can't knock down the walls. So the only answer is put more access points in.
Yep.
And, like a lot of hotels will use those in-wall access points. They have, like Ubiquiti has them, like Ruckus has them, and they're specifically made for that type of environment where they're much lower power output because they're only meant to be in a single room. But you're supposed to have a lot more of them. And then really, if you have that same sort of thick wall problem, interference isn't a huge issue because there's not a lot of signal leaking through to the other rooms anyways. Like that's the whole problem in the first place. I would still recommend, go through and separate out your channels such that you're not overlapping as much as possible, but it's not really that big a deal. Just pop in another access point.
Yeah, the walls literally block it. We did a bunch of in-walls for a project. They were old cinder block walls. Now, good news is we didn't have to get into the walls. They had already had them. They actually had the conduit on the outside of the wall that went into job boxes, so it was easy to install these, but completely solves the Wi-Fi problem. It was a series of dorm rooms, campus, and popping all those in meant everyone had great connectivity. You had a port restriction, so they had a couple ports that were part of a guest network with isolation, so no big deal. They could plug in if they wanted to. It's an easy solution for that. Now, the hard part is getting wires in there, and there's a reason I don't do residential wiring. Man, that is getting inside of walls like that, it can be done.
Yeah.
But we've done a few residential, and but we're very frank. We have we just did one of our clients, and he just bought a new $2 million house, and so he was willing to pay what it costs to get wires snaked inside the wall. But he was understanding that we come in and have to cut out part of the wall. We're not the wall putter backers. We can take a wall out. We can cut a hole.
Yeah.
You got a guy. He had a guy because he just bought the house, so they're doing construction on it. So we just said, perfect timing. We'll drill holes, and someone else can patch the drywall for you. And you're like, great.
You mentioned the dorm room. I had a funny story about that. Like when I was probably about 5 or 6 years ago, I got contacted from some folks in my local area that were actually in Corvallis, which is where the Oregon State University is. And they were a dorm environment. And they called me, they're like, listen, we haven't had internet for like a week. Like someone's got to come in and fix this thing. And I said, okay. So I pack up my stuff. I drive down there and I get in and start looking at it. And it strikes me that like all this wiring is completely messed up. Like coming out of the router was going into all of the wiring was just wrong. Everything was plugged into the wrong place. And I said, what happened here? He's like, oh, he kind of got all shy. And he's like, listen, one of our, a guy that's in this dorm, we were having some internet problems and he got all drunk and thought he could fix it. And literally just started replugging wires in various places to the point where they couldn't figure it out. They had been down for almost a week. And they're like, we got to get someone in here to fix this. We just don't know what to do here. And so it was pretty funny that I was like, okay. So I literally just unplugged everything and just rewired it. You know what I mean? Like you just got to start from scratch and just go again. Well, those jobs are always fun.
Yeah, the wiring cleanups, and I occasionally on Twitter I post. I mean, you've had some of your competitions you do. I think it's an annual one now at this point of worst wiring rooms and worst wiring jobs.
Yeah, I didn't do it last year. I think I'm gonna do it again this year, but I'm still on the fence about it.
Yeah, no, I like those. You know, they're always it's always fun, and there's always what I think it's like Reddit R Cable Gore and places like that. There's so many disasters. The crazy part is just I've been in some really big companies, and we did a cleanup for a company that was huge in a couple sections of them. We're talking like they're around, you may have heard of them type company. They have locations everywhere. And we've done a couple, they're based here in Michigan. We did a couple of locations, and it's funny because they like us because of YouTube, but they were very adamant at the beginning. This isn't going on YouTube, right? And I'm like, no, don't worry. We asked permission first. I go, we'd prefer our name not be on any of this because we don't want any of our customers. We really like you. Like their IT team was super cool. But they said, we love your videos, Tom, but we really don't want to be in them. Like we cringe every time we see you post something on Twitter because we're like, that's how our room looks. And they couldn't get approval for a long time. The owner they have a pretty tight IT team doing a lot of good stuff and good on security and all the right things. But the wiring room was like, it's been getting worse and worse. And it just kind of got out of control, and no one would take ownership of it because no one wanted to touch it. It's that house of cards. Like, we're not sure where any of these wires go, but things are working. So no one wants to unplug it.
Yeah. That's funny. We had a client last year that had like one of the most interesting point to multi-point use cases that we've ever worked on. On top of that, it was in a tropical location that I would have been very happy to go visit. And they made us sign an NDA, same thing. Like, you can't put any of this on YouTube. We can't have our name anywhere, anything like that. Like, I was dying to go out there and do a video on this really amazing setup that we did. And I just can't talk about it. I'm just like, man, come on.
You know,
I do have another one coming up soon, though. A buddy of mine bought a cabin up in a lake in Idaho. And I'm going out there in a couple weeks to do the initial sort of setup. It's like multi-property or multi-dwellings on a single property. So getting that all dialed in and set up. And right now they have a 16 megabit WISP connection, which is really, I think it's like 16 by... No, I take it back. 16 is the max they can get. What they have is 4 megabits by 1 or 2 up. Really terrible. I told him to sign up for Starlink and at least get on the list so that he can, start heading that direction. And he texted me. This is a guy who is pretty well off, and he texted me and he said, "Listen, I know you said sign up for Starlink. I went ahead and signed up for Starlink Business because I think I'll get it faster." And I was like, okay,
Hey.
I hope so.
Get some connectivity.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, it's a challenge because where I'm at here in Michigan, we are lucky enough to have multiple providers. I have 3 fiber options at my office that's down the street.
Amazing.
We have a site to site because of a building, because one of the fiber providers also uses one of the big tall buildings that's by us as a point to point for offering connectivity. They sell service like that. They're like a WISP, but they only sell business. They don't sell to consumers.
Yeah.
And they use it as backup connections when you get their fiber. And then we have 2 cable providers and a DSL. All of those are available in this little area, but this is the greater Detroit area. Once you go like where my family lives, like 3 hours away north, some of my relatives, there's nothing. My dad is on a really, really slow WISP connection that he's at the edge of even getting.
Wow.
And we had to put a tower up to get it.
Yikes.
Yeah, we had to build a tower in his backyard just to be able to receive it. So yeah, I think Starlink's going to be, it helps add connectivity in some of these rural areas. So.
Have you seen the $50 flat rate T-Mobile home ISP service?
No.
Look it up here. I'll send you another link here. And this is not an endorsement. I have not tried this. I just think it seems cool. And I think it's an idea that we might see more and more of as we go forward here. So yeah, $50 flat rate. Look at this product.
Someone says in the chat real quick, let me think, Chris, I found free PBX videos and installed an old Yealink appliance. Works great. Very helpful. Yes.
Very cool. Yeah. It's funny because I'm going through that video tutorial series still. I'm like 30 videos into that series. The thumbnail has me with a shaved head because I started it during, COVID quarantine. So it's like, it's funny every time I put out a new video, it's like I look completely different than when I started filming those, but like they're difficult to do because they take some time, especially in editing. And I want the content to be good. And there's, like I said, it's probably a maybe 40 video series of which I'm like 30 videos into it. And I'm hoping to do like another 4 videos. I was going to do it today, but then, I'm on this live stream, so I won't get to any video recording today. So, but yeah, look at this. $50 a month flat rate.
Not
T-Mobile 5G internet. And I put a tweet out about this and I said, hey, does anyone have this? How is it? And of course, it's going to be completely dependent on the 5G coverage in your area. But a lot of people said that they were getting really good, like 80 to 150 megabit speeds over 5G with this service. And $50 flat rate is really good, especially if it's a backup internet service for you. That is
a really good price on that. I'm impressed. So have to see what they're doing like that. I mean, I think there's a lot of opportunity in that market space for the wireless carriers to kind of pick up the slack, like and build a new business model and compete with the Comcast, compete with them. And I seen someone posted in here. See. Unless your township signed an exclusive deal with a certain provider that should remain nameless. Travis is a local, and I know exactly what he's talking about. And this is a problem here in Michigan. Me and the mayor got into a fun debate a couple times because he didn't like my cord cutting. He literally didn't like my cord cutting video that got posted in one of his forum posts about the city because they were mad. They had data caps before Comcast was talking data caps. And his reasoning why is because he wants everyone to buy, they have their own cable TV service and they have their own internet the city provides, and they lock out the competition from coming in, but then they charge exuberant prices to the citizens. So they literally, you get less if you live in that city, you pay more for internet than you will if you had Comcast in the adjacent cities. And Comcast is not cheap. And they have data caps lower than Comcast, speeds worse than Comcast. They took forever to get to DOCSIS 3. And so there's so many little nuances to those problems. I know exactly what Travis is talking about. And this is where the opportunity is. You can't stop a wireless tower because it already exists. Yeah. 5G on there, the citizens can have good internet again. I didn't move to that city, even though I liked when I was looking for houses. We found something we really loved in the city. Only the edges of the city have the potential to get some Comcast. Once you're in the city, nope. So I actually had to remove them from my real estate search a couple of years ago.
So a lot of people are saying Two people have said that the problem with the T-Mobile service is that it's CGNAT, which is very much like Starlink, which is also CGNAT. And again, though, for a backup internet service for home, if you're like a home like myself, or you're very dependent on working out of your home office, even if it is CGNAT, $50 a month for a backup internet connection. If I'm offline completely, I'm having a bad day, right? So $50 a month is worth it to have that sort of peace of mind. Now, I do have like business class Comcast service with 5 static IP addresses, but I only use those static IP addresses. I don't have any services coming in. I use the static IPs to connect out to securely to the servers that I administer, right? So, we lock stuff down so that like my UniFi server, only my IP address can get to that UniFi server. So there would be some inconvenience if I was using it as a backup, but it's still not terrible. I mean, it's better than nothing.
Yeah. And the reality is, I got to do some updated videos on this topic. More and more people are behind CGNAT. That's kind of a given. But there are ways you can bridge between, if you are planning to build your home lab and you would like to have some service publicly exposed, but even when you have a public IP address, this comes up in the gaming community a lot. There are ways you can do this. You can build a VPN. So your public IP is in Vultr, Linode, or DigitalOcean, and then bridged back to your private IP. And the reason you do that is really simple, especially in the gaming world. People get mad. What do? DDoS. You're just getting taken offline. And if they know your public IP, they aren't just taking your game offline. They're really literally taking you offline. You are just going to get hammered. And if you're, and we've helped people set this up, it's just a tricky engineering thing to do, bridging like a pfSense out to a public IP address, and then you're forwarding data across that particular port so you can get to it. There's also tools, and one of the easy ones to install is ngrok. If you haven't heard of it, they actually have some really cheap pricing and a couple free tiers on this, but this even allows you to put things out there when you want to host on networks that are internal and bridge them externally. There's different utilities for doing things like this. And as a matter of fact, in some ways, it's better because you're not exposing your own public IP. You're letting someone else deal with it.
I can't tell you how much Adobe Premiere Pro masking I have to do in videos to block out my own IP address. Like, I purposefully use a NATed IP address on my test network specifically so that I don't have to accidentally give away my static IP address by missing something in a video, right? So it's the WAN IP is a 10.x, so it's like it's an internal network. It doesn't really matter that much, but yeah, it's a real problem. I had some in my last home. I had someone found out my WAN IP and they were doing creepy stuff, like it's comments about like, oh, I see you live next to this or next to that or stuff like that. It's just like, oh, guys, really scary.
Yeah. And Jeff Curling, I actually made a joke at his expense. I said, come on, Jeff, I think they're DDoSing you, so you keep making more DDoS content. I mean, because I'm really enjoying his series on how to stop DDoSes. But...
yeah, he's been in the thick of it for sure.
Yeah, he's. I talked to him personally last night. We were chatting about a couple of things, but yeah, it's been a challenge for him to do this. It's kind of like he, especially he takes a lot of time because they're DDoSing his website. He doesn't just do a video. His videos are accompanied by a pretty extensive write-up. They're almost part of his script that he used for the video. So all of the commands. So it's great. I can watch a video. I can copy and paste commands, get a better understanding or links to the things he was talking about, all the GitHub links. But then when your website's down, cool, I got to watch his video, but I need those links to try to follow along with his Raspberry Pi projects and things like that. So it's really, really quite aggravating. And I mean, Jeff is just a super nice guy. If anyone hasn't followed Jeff Curling's channel, he's great. So.
And like the videos are very well produced. I know he does write scripts for all of them. Like I said, he does the accompanying documentation. I don't think people understand the amount of time and effort that goes into that. It's a lot. It's really a lot.
Yeah. The behind the scenes of being a YouTuber is kind of just a lot when it comes to things. And it can also be aggravating. I actually, I didn't get a chance. I was going to tweet this. I had a comment that made me pause, but at least laugh. Someone said, have you considered, Tom, the environmental impact of you wasting CPU cycles by recording at 60 frames a second? It doesn't help your videos. And I'm just like, no, I have not.
That has not crossed my mind. No, it has not.
Doesn't seem to be the concern I have. I guess I just wasted some extra render CPU cycles. I mean, yeah, I probably don't have to record in 60 frames a second, but I think it gives it a nice look. So I do. Like,
yeah. Well, you should be like, when you put out your videos, you can do yours at 10 frames per second, and that'll negate the extra frames that Tom's doing.
Yeah, just makes sense. Or don't use YouTube because it's, I don't know. Yeah, it is always the, and trying to figure out, you had tweeted about this the other day too, just kind of figure out what products people want, which ones they're not mad at you for doing. There's always you're just never going to please everyone, is what I've always had to accept for quite a while. But sometimes you really get these weird people on there. So
yeah, there's all sorts of, and it does take a certain level of like having thick skin to just be on, just to look at the comments in the first place. But sometimes it just wears you down. Sometimes you just get worn down. When I put out that tweet, it was the same thing. It was just like, I was just having a day where like something, I think it was probably about 2 or 3 different things I had seen in 24 hours that just triggered me like, each one is just a little tiny knife in your heart, and enough knives add up to where you're just like, screw this. Why am I even making content on YouTube? This is stupid.
You're like, I put 4 hours of effort into this little, even if it's a short video, not just the editing time, but sometimes for me, especially, the Netgate 4100 video was a little bit longer than I expected it to be, but so much time took. I had to set up different VPNs, do all the testing, set up the scripts to run the test, then change settings, run the test again. I even went through and was playing with different ciphers and what happened when you turned on QAT acceleration with this cipher, or you used the the Cha-Cha Poly cipher, and did the whole video. And someone's like, you didn't open it up. You wasted my time because you didn't open it up. And I literally said I didn't open it up because 1, there's no user serviceable parts in it. And 2, Netgate did a video where they opened it up. I said, you could see inside. I have why would I take this thing apart? I also, I have it sitting here, the little screws on the bottom are those, not security bit ones, but I don't have Torx. The tool. They're weird Torx. And I have these at my office, but I'm at my studio right now, and I'm like, I could go get them and take it apart. But also, this plastic is a pain to get on and off. And
is it really?
Yeah, it's just, there's nothing to service inside of it. And even Netgate says that we didn't make this user serviceable. If you order it with the extra card in it, the upgraded memory slot, it's a B slot, so you can't even hardly find these. So they're not something you have to order a special B slot memory expansion thing to put it in there. That's it. That's the one thing you could do. And even Netgate's very clear on that. It's all in their documentation, and they say it in their own video that there's no user serviceable. And by the way, here's what it looks like. They did like a whole exploded view of it that I wouldn't do, because they even warned me that, as I did ask them about taking it apart. They said, don't separate the heatsink from the processor. That's hard to get back together. Good luck.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it is fun to poke inside things, but if they've already done it, that's, whatever. You could even put up a screenshot of that. Here's it. Here, they already did it. Look at this video. I'll put a link down below or something.
Yeah, and that's how I feel. Like they did cover it. They went and looked inside of it, and I did look inside the 6100. That's how I know how hard that plastic is to get on and off.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'll leave that one alone. It was.
I'll show you. I'll show you something cool. Hang on, I got to grab something off screen here.
All right.
Ugh. I just got these in. Product that I've never reviewed or even thought about reviewing. They are IR blocking sunglasses, or IR blocking glasses.
I think you tweeted a picture of that. That was cool.
I did. I tweeted it out yesterday. And actually, they're not just IR. So look at these. These are really interesting. Again, I paid for these with my own money, for everyone who thinks it's a sponsored ad. So look at these. They look a little interesting, right? These ones, so they make multiple versions. These are reflecticles. These ones here have this coating on them here, this white coating, where the lenses are IR blocking. It's like if you're wearing these, you cannot unlock your iPhone with your face.
Oh,
right. So
neat.
that's the lenses. And then this coating that's all around the lenses is visible light reflectors. So if you are wearing these in low light situations, like at nighttime, you show up as just a big white flash. Like your whole face is just a big white flash on camera.
Didn't you? There it is. I'm going to pull it up because you have that on Twitter too, right?
Yeah, I did put it maybe a week or two ago. I did a screenshot of me wearing them. Yeah, look at that. So that's this exact pair. So not only are you sort of thwarting facial recognition with the IR blocking lenses, which actually work really well. I put another tweet about that yesterday where I did sort of the comparison of regular glasses and these. But then you have the visible light, which bounces back visible light into the camera.
That's nice.
Isn't that crazy? And they're actually surprisingly well built too. Like
they
a lot
look
of
like
times
a nice
with
pair of
these,
sunglasses.
they are. I mean, I don't know, like aesthetically, or I'm not the most fashion forward guy, but like they look a little goofy, but like they're super cool. And my question on these is, do you think you would get like if you just wore these through the airport or like through a casino? Do you think anyone would give you crap about it?
That's a question. So I'm trying to remember. I remember there was an anti-paparazzi thing that some of them used to wear. Similar concept. So when the flash hit, it always reflected back at the camera and made it hard to take pictures of celebrities. I remember something like that. A couple of them had. They would have different things around them to do it. So it's kind of that same concept.
Yeah, sort of. So
yeah,
like
I don't think
the
there's any
pictures
rules
wouldn't turn out.
against it.
I don't think there's rules against it either, but you might get stopped. And the thing is, the AI facial recognition stuff is getting so creepy now.
Really creepy.
There is literally no chance that legislation is going to catch up with it in the next decade.
No. The only good thing that happened was with the IRS. They were going to use that one company. I can't remember their name, but they were a facial recognition company, and they wanted everyone to submit their facial recognition. And they got called out pretty quick for being outright shady. And the history of that company was not good in terms of privacy. And everyone's like, why does the IRS suddenly want us to use a third-party authorization to prove who we are? And they actually backed out of the deal, so the deal didn't close. So it's definitely, yeah.
John Oliver just did a segment on this,
yes.
Or he did one not that long ago, and it was Clearview AI was the name of the company that was super creepy. And their whole business model is they went through and scraped billions of pictures off of social media, Facebook and Twitter and wherever. They just scraped all the data. And they were even like lawsuits were brought against them by those companies to say, hey, stop scraping all the pictures for data. And they basically did facial recognition scans on every picture, and they put it into a big database where if you take a picture, any picture, you scan it with their app, and it will show you matching. It'll show you that person. It'll show you all of the pictures they have of that person. And this is, by the way, like me, I don't have a Facebook account, but like Tom, if you and I took a picture together and you put it up on your Facebook account, I am now in that database. Yeah, I am now in that database because of that, right? And so that's the type of scary stuff that's like, I don't know. So especially if you're the type of person that's going out to protests or, anything like that, it's probably not a bad idea to have and wear a pair of these, just to have every little bit of advantage that you possibly can, just in case, like one of those sorts of things.
Yeah, and I've years ago, and actually, this is something I have I think it was required reading, I say, for my kids because I told them to read it. Was Cory Doctorow's book, Little Brother, and it talks so much about what could happen. And what's interesting, that book is now from like 2006 or 7, maybe. It's an older book, but boy, so they even kind of joke when they have Cory Doctorow on for some of his interviews, like, Cory, you seem to have predicted the future. Did you know something? And he's like, nope, this is what happens. Hold on. Let me mute my phone.
That's your Google-Fi?
Yeah. That's I forget sometimes to mute the tab that is Google-Fi. There's not Google doesn't have they don't have a way to say don't ring other than close the tab that it's on. So I just mute it.
They don't have a mute, huh?
They don't have a mute, which I think is strange.
Very strange.
So
you know what I saw today on the road for the first time? I saw my first Rivian R1T.
Those are cool.
Actually drove past me while I was out and about today. I was like, oh, look, oh my God. Because I think it's the coolest truck, and I've never actually seen one in person until today. I was very stoked about it.
They are pretty slick. I love the reviews on them. I think Jerry Rig Everything did a video on it. He's got one. He's
Yes.
done a couple. They've I like all the cameras, the underneath cameras. That is, for someone who enjoys off-roading, I'm like, those are really cool things because you're not worried about what's going to go clunk under there. You're watching everything around you. I think that's just really novel.
It's really neat. I mean, it's a truck that seems to hit all of the buttons, right? But except for the problem that they got to get past is the towing. If you like, we're looking right now at getting a a little camper trailer, like one of those like R-Pod size, camper trailers, so that we can go camping, or go take it out, whatever, camping. And like, I was like, ooh, well, maybe I'll just get the R1T and that'll give me a great excuse to get the truck that I want and be able to pull, because it can pull like 11,000 pounds or something. It's crazy. And then you read the reviews, and as soon as you put it into tow mode, it essentially drops the battery capacity in half or worse. So basically, when you're towing something with the truck, and any electric truck, you're basically getting about 100-mile range, and which means you're stopping every 60 to 90 minutes to recharge, which on a long road trip is not feasible. It's just not feasible.
No, and the other challenge this is a big problem here in Michigan with the current trucks that they are offering from Ford, and the Mach-E is like a big vacation spot here at Traverse City. And one of the engineers that works for Ford, I go to car shows locally, and he told me, he says, this is a challenge he's got. He can't drive his Mach-E to his cabin in Traverse City. And he said, that's the problem. There's no charging infrastructure. There is for Tesla, but there's not for the non-Teslas. There's nobody who's built any charging infrastructure right here in Detroit. We are a giant dead zone for any fast chargers. We only have the really, really slow, they call level 1, the chargers that take like 6 hours.
The ones that you just connect your app up to them, and then they're charged like super slow. It's like 30 amps or max or something. Like it's real.
It's no way you're going to charge it, because like you can't drive for an hour and go, oh, let me stop for 6 just to charge again.
Right.
Versus my Tesla, no problem. I drive my Tesla to far reaching, even the weird rural areas of northern Michigan. Tesla has put supercharging stations that I can skip every other one and still make it to the top of the state, to the middle of nowhere.
Oh, that's crazy.
But I don't know, I imagine it's some type of ego war, that because Elon says he's willing to lease it to other companies, but no one has taken him up on the offer. But
didn't he open source he open sourced something? Was it not the charging technology?
Yeah, he did. And I think there's just an ego problem that people don't want to use it. And I don't understand why. So if you go back to, I forget the name of the J1330, whatever the open standard one, the SAE version. So that one is on all the cars, but when that one was available, the reason, and Elon outlined this a long time ago, the reason he came up with the adapter he has is not to be proprietary, but he says, I am going to deliver this many amps. I don't have time for standards organizations to eventually 10 years from now approve something, which he's right. It did take him 10 years to approve better DC fast charging. He goes, I want to do fast charging when I released the Model S in 2012. So he had these fast charging adapters that, by the way, 10 years later, he still got the same adapters, and they still work and they still fast charge. And the other companies going, hey, now we have one. Well, cool, guys. You caught up to what I was doing 10 years ago.
Right. There was some article that I saw. It was just one of those things where I saw the headline. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I think it was, I want to say it was like Montreal or Ottawa, or there was some, I believe it was some sort of Canadian town that was looking at implementing a $10,000 charge on gas stations that don't have electric charging capability by like 2028 or something like that. Like basically like forcing the hand of gas stations to implement electric vehicle charging, which I think is a really great idea.
We just need to, it's kind of the cart and a horse. Like, people would buy more electric vehicles if there was more electric charging. There's not enough electric charging, so it's hurting the sales of electric vehicles, with the exception of Tesla, who you got to wait 6 months to get it. But that's, for me, is in Michigan, I can't even buy, as someone pointed out here, Detroit's the center of the world for vehicle manufacturing. We still are pretty big and heavy into manufacturing, but it's always weird. Like the Mach-E, Ford pushed it, but Ford's also not doing anything to help build infrastructure to charge it. So you kind of just charge it at home and don't go outside of your radius to your house. And I have numerous friends who work at Ford and got Mach-E's early and things like that because they couldn't believe, like, Tom, I have to support the company I work for. And I'm like, oh, good luck. Want to ride in my car to Traverse City? Like,
there, I sent you the link. It was Vancouver.
Vancouver,
it was somewhere in Canada. So 10,000 Canadian annual fee for gas stations that don't provide 50 kilowatts of charging power.
Oh, cool. I mean, it's an interesting partnership was reached in Ohio and Pennsylvania. The name of the company eludes me right now, but it's a gas station, and their gas stations are split. One side is traditional gas station. Then you have like a store, party store. They actually have some snacks and a little, kind of like a fast food place. They have a small deli. And on the other side is a Tesla charging station. So if you park on the Tesla side, you walk in. You park on the other side, you walk in. When I travel south, actually, I stopped at them when me and you were in Pittsburgh that one time. And it's kind of cool. All their travel stations have split it like that. And it's kind of nice. You got your electric charging stations. And I think they have Tesla and then 2 stalls that are like the other charging stations. On
standard. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Which is pretty cool. I mean, and even right now they're building side by side some of the Tesla ones with that. So it's coming along, taking some time.
Well, I'll tell you, that's one of the sort of, I guess, unintentional side effects of the, current hike in gas prices, which, I'm sure will settle back down at some point. It always does. Mm-hmm. But so many people are like, why am I paying all this money for gas? Electric cars are looking much more attractive these days, which I love. I think that's great.
Yeah, it's going to get there. The speed is also there for the car enthusiasts. So I'm seeing the car enthusiast crowd get into it. Like I said, I attend some of the local car shows and they're going, oh, at first they were like skeptics, but now they're kind of, okay, that is kind of cool. So making it kind of fun. Let's pivot real quick here. Sure. I have about 200 people on here, 195, but only 50 likes. So people, hit the like button, man.
Let's do a giveaway, Tom. What do you have to give away?
I have nothing to give away today. I did not plan
Look
that.
Look around you. You must have something. Come on.
I know.
What about that picture? There's a picture hanging on the wall behind you. Grab that.
I have mints. I'm giving out free mints.
Thumbs up if you want to see Tom do a giveaway.
Yeah. I don't know what he's going to give away. Maybe he'll make that part up later.
That's right.
I will mention, though, this, because this is something else I wanted to talk about here. Well, there's 2 things. And first one, this is a service we're using, and I think this is pretty cool. Let me get to the right tab. Is UniFi. We talk a lot about them, and they are, well, not always in stock, as everyone is quick to point out. Matter of fact, that's my other review. Well, you reviewed the product, but I can't get it. And I'm like, well, look, I don't control the supply chain. And I know no one likes the word supply chain. It's a dirty word.
Without fail, you will get that comment at least once on any Ubiquiti video that you put out. Like, absolutely.
Yeah. But this is a service that can let you find out exactly when things are in there. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So we built UI Notify specifically for that reason, mostly because I wanted it. There were some people that were already kind of doing something similar. So like there's a Reddit, there's a subreddit that does product in stock notifications for Ubiquiti gear. There's also the sort of official, unofficial Ubiquiti Discord that had something similar to this, but they actually kind of moved it behind like an activity wall, not really a paywall, but like you had to maintain some higher level of activity in their Discord server in order to get access to the stock notifications. So we built this UI Notify basically just to have a way for people to get their stock notifications. And there's a number of ways that you can get it for free. Everyone bitches about, hey, why are you charging money for this? We charge the $4.99 per month that you see right there. We charge that because SMS messages are expensive.
Yeah. If you don't know the back end, they are expensive. This is a big cost to this.
Anyone who's watching this, I promise you, this is not putting any food on my table.
Yeah, this is not.
It's not at all. It's just basically covering our costs for the SMS stuff. But you can get it for free if you sign up via email. You can get it for free if you follow at UI Notify on Twitter, and you can get it for free in the Crosstalk Discord. We are giving away all of this information for free, all of those ways. If you're interested in signing up for the pro version, you can get tweets, SMS messages as well. That's basically, and you can also filter on products. Like if you only want to look for specific products, you don't want to get notified about everything. That's where you can sign up and get that, which a lot of people have found very helpful.
Yeah. And Travis, local, he's also, does IT. And this is absolutely like, it's worth it to me to pay a few dollars to get these things. This is a real, problem is making sure things are in stock. I'm not going to lie that we've using it and we're buying sometimes all of it. We now have a lot of boxes at my office because we have some big projects that we're like, the customer said, yes, we got a deposit. We have a scheduled date. We don't have as much product. Now, one of the things I want to be upfront about, and because I've seen a lot of people asking this question, how do you deal with customers in a supply chain, Tom? I'm like, be honest with them. Don't lie. You're going to get in trouble.
Sure.
We tell them exactly what we're doing. We are buying as much stock as we can. Our goal is to meet your delivery date. This is also why the saying yes and the install date are not as close as they would like to be, because we are being very realistic to say, this is when we think we'll have enough product to get your install done. This is the reality of things.
Right.
So,
or you have to be a little bit malleable with the actual equipment that you're using, right? So like maybe this model's not available, but here's a model that'll work. Maybe the price is a little bit higher or lower, so you got to work that out, but it is possible. And especially for someone who resells Ubiquiti equipment for projects, cameras and stuff like that, right? The service is super valuable. We get a lot of comments of people that are like, thank you for doing this, because it's not necessarily a problem of Ubiquiti not getting stuff in stock. As we've seen, they get stuff in stock very regularly.
Yeah.
It's just the stock flies off the shelves before you can get it.
Yes. It tells you how many's in stock. And then it's funny because Brett was yelling in the office yesterday. He's my sales manager. He yells down the hallway, hey, there's about this many in stock. Should I buy them? And I said, I'm busy. I got off the phone. He's like, oh, there's about half as many in stock now. I'm like, buy. Quit asking me. Just buy them. This is how many we need. We'll make a sheet for you.
I just saw actually today some SunMax stuff came into stock, which is interesting because I almost thought that was like a
end of life discontinued.
Yeah, kind of like a discontinued thing, but they had some of those SunMax sun switches came into stock. And I also see they get big drops of like the G3 instant cameras. They go very quickly because they're super cost effective, like $29, even at like limit 2 per customer. They did a drop of like 1,000 of them the other day and they were gone within a few hours. Which is just crazy. So it's not that they don't get stock. It's that you have to the timing is the problem.
Yeah. And, I kind of going back to I posted it yesterday. And of course there's plenty of comments on the Netgate 4100, people upset about it costing a little more. And this is another side of the supply chain is it costs when you're a small manufacturer like Netgate's making the product. They're not just slapping the name Netgate on something. They actually engineer it. They find the manufacturers, which also means they have to source the products, the chips, and everything else. And it's causing between delays because there's a finite amount of it. And I kind of learned through them and some links I read and things like that. What's going on behind the scenes is there's just a finite supply of some of the chips. This is there was a photo someone had posted. Finally, there's been like a 9-month delay on a bunch of the GM trucks that GM or Ford, they couldn't ship them. So they have this weird brand new truck lot, this graveyard, it looks like, because there's weeds growing. It's an old lot. They have so many trucks, like they can build them and they're sharing the chips to start the truck and drive it out to the lot. And then they take it out and they go walk back in the place.
Oh, wow.
And they start the next, like we tested the truck. We're waiting for the chips, but it's driving up all the prices sometimes. Or UniFi's actually been a good job, I think, of keeping the prices reasonable, but the supply is the slow side for them. Yeah. So they seem to be able to get that. So yeah, the imbalance in the market right now, with the economy doing well enough that people want to go forward with projects, but that demand exceeding the ability for people to manufacture them at scale, is it's created a really weird market here in 2022.
It is. And you see some stuff, especially like I said, I was saying earlier, we're in the market for some sort of truck that can pull a small camper. And like,
You know how
there's
hard that is to buy.
that's what I mean. It's just like, and it's not that it's hard. It's hard to buy. Basically, like the dealerships will get like 2 or 3 at a time. You know, maybe every 2 or 3 weeks they get a small drop of vehicles, and they've got like waiting lists for them. Like, people are already like, I don't care what features it has. I don't care what color it is. I just want it. Tell me when it's in and I'll buy it. You know what I mean? And that's just crazy, especially in the auto market, which is, you know, it's not, these things aren't cheap.
Nope. I have got offers because I bought a new truck last year. Well, slightly used truck. It was only a couple years old. My offers now are up to $4,000 more than I paid for it almost 2 years ago. I can get for that truck. It's crazy. We actually, because we get sold my wife's Jeep later, and because we couldn't believe the offers on it. She had a 2016 Jeep. She drove it for several years, and she was able to get. I was like, I can't believe they're offering you that much for the Jeep. I'm like, really? It's just, yeah, the vehicle market is just wild right now.
Well, and like just another schmuck. You see that comment? It said, Americans have been so used to instant junk to your home, some scarcity freaks people out. And you're not wrong about that. On top of the fact that I think America, like much of the world, has now built an economy very dependent on the cheap labor out of other, Malaysia and China and India or wherever, we source these products from. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I don't think anytime real soon, but maybe towards the end of our lifetimes and our kids' lifetimes, certainly, if politically or economically those supply chains get severed, especially in the US, we're going to have a big problem. It's going to be a big problem.
Yeah, it's I don't think people realize how delicate it is. Little disruptions have like that ripple effect. It's the butterfly effect. Something bad happens here, and a ship gets stuck in the canal sideways. The next thing you know, everything's expensive for a little while.
I'm looking at my security cameras right now. It is hailing outside.
Oh, we got that this morning. Before we get to the end of this, one more thing I wanted to mention, and I thought this was a cool thing you'd posted, is you're looking at doing a class.
Yeah, well, I should say we are doing a class on free PBX. That is, if you go to clearlyip.com/events, that is our free PBX course that is coming up in June. And along those same lines, we are debating whether to do a networking course, because the free PBX course is always very well received. It provides a lot of valuable information. That's Photoshop, by the way. That's not actually my body. I don't know.
I was gonna say it's not.
It kind of looks like my body. Yeah. I'm not quite that thin anymore, but yeah, that is a Photoshop. I always find that funny. But this is myself and Tony Lewis, who's the CEO of Clearly IP. So we have this course coming up in June, which is always a good one, especially the summertime course, because it's not nearly so cold outside. But we are also looking at the possibility of doing a networking fundamentals course, not based on UniFi, but based on more just core fundamentals. We would be using pfSense, Netgate pfSense appliance, along with some switch. We're not sure exactly which switch yet. We're still in the preliminary stages of this. We just wanted to get a feel for, number one, would people be interested in attending this course at the prices that we put down there? It's about $500 a day to attend, taught by myself and our network guru, David Barger. And then where would be a good spot for it? Now, look at this list of cities, Tom. If you were going to guess, we've had close to 60 responses on this form. What do you think is the number one most requested city to host an event like this out of this list that's right there?
Vegas?
No, it's Atlanta, Georgia.
Really?
By a long shot. It goes Atlanta, Georgia, number one, then Dallas, Texas, then Portland, Oregon. Vegas wasn't anywhere near. It wasn't even in the top three. Which I would have thought Vegas would have been up there too, but no.
Yeah, just hey, let's just fly to Vegas.
Yeah, well, I also thought that San Francisco would be popular because that's it's so easy to get to San Francisco. And it's in California. It's nice in San Fran, especially in the summertime.
I think New York would be the hardest. New York's closer to me, but New York would be challenging to get a venue. And
it is.
Getting around New York is not easy.
Yeah, maybe we would do Hoboken or something, close to New York, but a little bit cooler. than than
Make it
being
Boston.
right in the
Man,
big
I
city.
love Boston. That's Boston's a really cool place, and it's actually easy to get around there. It's I like it because it's kind of cool and historic.
Well, we put up Dallas, Texas, but in thinking about it, I was like, we'd probably rather do Austin because Austin is just so cool. If you've ever been, have you been to Austin before?
I have not been to Austin.
Oh, it's such a cool city. It's like it's just got a really cool vibe to it, whereas Dallas is mostly just concrete. If you enjoy concrete, welcome to Dallas, Texas.
They said you didn't have Detroit on the list.
I don't have Detroit on the list. How close are we to Detroit, though? I guess not really.
Yeah,
Atlanta,
nothing.
I guess, or New York would be the closest.
New
we
York
have
is
to
probably the
Detroit.
closest on this list to Detroit.
Yeah, we don't have anything. We could probably do Chicago. Maybe would be a good choice,
Yeah.
which is kind of in that general area. I know Chicago is very far from you, but you know what I mean. Like,
Yeah,
just
Chicago's about a 3.5 or 4 hour drive, so it's not.
no, that's not too bad. That's about that's what it was. When I lived in Los Angeles, that was the drive to Vegas was about 3.5, 4 hours, and
Yeah.
that was easily doable for a weekend. Now it's not so easy to get there from Oregon.
No, and that's it's actually our joke. Me and my tech friends that are here is like we're going to a tech event and on May 5th in Chicago. Like I asked a couple of them, are you going to go? Well, of course, it's the only one that we can drive to because there is nothing that happens in Detroit. With the exception of one thing that's happening, Kubernetes Con, the big Kubernetes conference, happens to be held in Detroit, which is put on by the Linux Foundation themselves, which I'm like, oh, cool, this is pretty reputable. And one of my friends works for the Linux Foundation in here. And I said, I didn't know you guys were actually doing an event here. And he just said, I didn't know one either. He goes, why are we doing it here? And I was like, I don't know, man. You're actually doing it in Detroit. And I think that's strange because we don't have any tech conferences here. Everything we hear conference wise is automotive related, the International Auto Show and things like that. Nothing really tech related.
But yeah, so a lot of people did say the class should be remote, which we might do that. You certainly make it a lot cheaper and just do it. But there's a lot of logistical issues with doing a class like this remote versus in person, right? In person, we have all the equipment. The instructors are right there to look over your shoulder and help you with things as we're doing the labs. So it's just a lot easier to do it in person. And I just feel like there's much more value in it for the students when they are right there. Plus, if you're doing it remote, you're paying, maybe not as much money, but you're also doing it remotely and you can be much more easily distracted. Like you won't get as much out of the course, I think, doing it remotely. But we have talked about it. So we might do that, but we just have to figure out the right way to do it.
Yeah, it's tricky. And there is, because we've joked around about this, me and my wiring team, because a lot of people ask you how to do training on wiring. And we've done some videos on it and the videos have done well. And we're like, do we do more training videos on this? Or do we bring people to a place and hold a training? It's one of the reasons I brought it up. It's something we've been thinking about as well. So I'm just completely spitting out loud here about it. It's, let me know if there's something like that, but check out, Chris does the networking stuff. I thought about some of that infrastructure, like how to set up a rack, and some of that stuff might be another add-on as well. We do so much of it, and it's one of those things you can only learn so much from, reading a book on it or something like that. It's like Chris said, the easily distracted, but when an instructor walks you through a pile of stuff and turns it into a functioning thing, and your phone's not in your hand, you're not, there's a better, more focused learning. Plus, you may have a question or a concept that's harder for you to raise your hand remotely on, but when you're in person, you can go, oh, hey, why did you plug in the red wire there?
Yeah. No, the cabling videos are probably, Mac Telecom was saying the cabling videos are probably, people do love the cabling videos. They're time consuming. They're hard to make. Yeah, they are hard to make.
Yeah. I have numerous ones in the queue right now. And one of them, so I literally was supposed to record the next part. I'm trying to remember the date. Probably about 6 months ago is when we started it. For all kinds of delays for every reason imaginable. And then we were supposed to finish punching down yesterday. So I was going to go film it. The guy called us. He wants 40 more drops installed.
Ooh.
We're like, good. But now the project's still not finished again. So now I can't show any of the finalization videos because they also moved a couple things and then added 40 more drops. So yes, it's
You love that. Adding on to the project.
yeah. So just adding on to it. So it's and what's weird is like if you looked at my folders for these videos, I have all the video of different things. Matter of fact, it's one of them. I think I showed we were pulling 20 boxes at a time of cable there because it's such a big project. It covers multiple floors. But like any of these projects, there's just been delay after delay. The drywall guys apparently, I don't know what happened to them. That's all I know is they were unavailable for like 2 months or something like that is what caused the biggest part of the delay. We ran everything and they're supposed to put the drywall up above it. We don't know what happened to them. We just know they're not available. That's all. It's the only answer we get. So it's drywall going in. Because it's if you go to some of the jobs, it's like new construction. So they have on the wall like a Gantt chart, all the dates of things that are going to happen. It's just a big question mark where the drywall guys. It's like way past the date they're supposed to install. There's just no drywall. I don't know.
Funny.
Yeah.
Hey, have you done any playing with your Flipper Zero?
No, that's actually my friend's, and I was playing with it at his house. He told me I could borrow it, but I said not yet because I don't want to get distracted. So I said, for the moment, please leave it at your house and play with it. And then I'm going to come bug you because I was going to wait till the firmware updates because he told me some more updates are coming to it. So he's doing some testing with it still. That way I can pick his brain. And he was hoping I would test it and then he could pick my brain. But I said, no, I'm going to put the onus on you. You bought it.
Yeah, no, I've got mine, but like the functionality that comes with it by default is not I mean, it's very limited what you can do with it without like adding on your own packages to it, which takes a little bit of research and downloading from GitHub and people that have started to design things that you can do with this above and beyond what it's allowed to do when you get it from the company. But it's a pretty cool device. I mean, I've certainly learned some stuff with it. I think I have it set up so I can. Is it the sub gigahertz? I'm looking at mine right now. Oh no, it's the RFID saved. Oh no, empty folder. So it doesn't seem to save stuff too, which is interesting. Like I had it set up so that I could turn this light behind my cabinet on and off with the thing, and that worked pretty well. Also, the IR light inside the cabinet I'd be able to turn on and off. I was able to read the signal for my automated blinds, but I couldn't actually reproduce the signal so that it would work. So there's just some interesting stuff you can do with it. I love the idea of it. It's just not quite super functional yet.
Yeah. I think that I think it was an episode or two ago, Steve Gibson covered how Toyota was doing the remote starts, and it should work perfectly fine for that because Toyota's decided they're not fixing it. Apparently they didn't put any security. You can just replay and it will just work. There's a bunch of stuff Toyota which is weird because these are like 2016, 2017. And this is after there's been incidents with other automotive companies, but Toyota's like, yeah, that's the thing. Sorry.
Oh, wow. So, yeah, because you think that like with that sort of wireless remote, like even garage doors have like rolling codes, right? That like, every time you hit the button, it's basically a different code. But like surprising to not have that on your car.
And that's kind of what was curious about the way Toyota implemented going. They did this implementation and other vehicles they did it right. But there's a whole bunch of them that didn't get it right. But previous ones had it. They just didn't roll the code. It's static. So it's replayable. And they're like, there's not even the counter for the rolling code part. And they're like, that's kind of a problem, guys. Like you didn't. This is, I don't know. I don't understand the automotive market in general because not last year, but the year before, I was at DEF CON Hacker Village for the car hacking village.
Yeah.
I have a couple of friends being here in Detroit. Their day job in and out is being car hackers. And I learned so much about just how bad, like there's never, like when they pen test a car, they don't just win. They have to figure out how many wins they're going to get when they do it.
Right.
There's always things that are just really goofy with car companies. So yeah, that's not so. I'll hats off. They're not finding many hacks with Tesla. Everyone's going after them because they have a pretty big bug bounty program. But the other automotives, yeah, they're not there.
Yeah.
They're slowly getting there.
I still really enjoy my Tesla. It's been that my opinion of Tesla as a car has stayed the same over the last like 3+ years that I've owned it. My opinion of Elon Musk has gone down drastically, but but I still do love the car. I absolutely love that Model 3. It's so much fun to drive.
Yeah. That's the thing. I celebrate the things he does right. And the Tesla's one of them. I have 50,000, 49,000 actually, just about 50,000 on my car. Bought it in 2019. I think that's when you got yours too. Was it 2018 or 2019?
18, yeah, 2018, right?
Yeah. And I'm happy with it. I don't know how many miles are on yours now.
I don't know either. I mean, I can look it up in the app. That's one of the nice things
Yeah,
about a
it tells
Tesla,
you
right?
exactly how many miles are on
Yeah.
there. But I'm not going to deny problems with it. I had the charge door not work. They replaced it on warranty. They just didn't pop open anymore. I don't know.
Yeah.
You hit the button and it would go. It would do this kind of limp thing. It would go like this. It wouldn't open all the way. And I'm like, They're like, did you break it? I'm like, what do you mean? I always hit the button and it opens. And I hit the button one day and it went. And it just kind of it won't stay up. But you could hold it up and charge, so it didn't stop me from driving. But they fixed that in warranty. So how many miles are yours?
45,000 miles. The service is great. Like it's been, so the closest Tesla service center to me is about 2 hours away. And there's only been, I think, once or twice that I've actually had to go there. Anytime else I've needed it serviced, they send the remote car out to me, which is great. Including the worst problem that I ever had with the car is one of the front skid plates flew off the car while I was driving. That it was raining, and it's kind of like that, not like cardboard, but not like really carbon fiber type material. Yeah. And it just, with the rain and the wind, it just, it covered or went around the screws. It just wore away. And so I was driving on the freeway, normal speeds, and it was raining pretty hard. And I see out the back of my window, this just up in the air, this 3 foot by 4 foot section of the underside of the car. Luckily, it flew up and off to the side of the highway, because that could really cause an accident or something. That's a big problem. But yeah, I called them up. I looked under the car, and sure enough, there's a skid plate missing, and called them up, and they just did it right at my house. They came out within about 3 or 4 weeks and brought it out. It took a long time because it's not something common that they replace a lot.
Yeah.
But that was not a good problem. Other than that, it's been pretty solid. I haven't really had a lot of problems with the car at all.
Yeah, well, I got caught up with the recall on the ball joints, but the ball joints started making some noise.
The squeaky noise, right?
The squeaky noise.
Yeah, I had that too, and I had to take that one into Portland to get it fixed.
Yep, but it's great. They fixed it under warranty. Awesome. They fixed it. No problem. And they didn't just do the one that was squeaking. They did both sides. So great. Now problem mitigated. They didn't find anything else wrong with the car. And then I told my wife, she forgot to honk the horn when it happened. A big piece of metal came off of a truck and went through the headlight. I mean, it blew it out. Ooh. And but I told her to honk. She would have gotten the license plate of the truck, because the security. She lost the clip from the recording because it rode over because I was in a long drive. But anyways, it was actually interesting. So I looked up how to replace the Tesla headlight. And then after I seen you have to take the front of the car off, I decided to call Tesla. But they came out and fixed it. Now, they did charge me for it, but think about it, this from any other vehicle you have. If you have a problem with it, and this would be for my truck, if something smashed the front end and I want it fixed, I'd drop it off at the dealership. They'd have it for some untold amount of time, and I would be inconvenienced. They came to my house. They fixed it. I think it took them about 2 hours, because he did have to take the front of the car off. He took the bumper off. Man, this is where you know there's a professional. Every video I watched said take the bumper off. This guy says, I do these all the time. He grabbed a series of zip ties and hung the bumper off zip ties down far enough to get the whole headlight assembly off. He goes, this saves you all the trouble, because then he didn't have to take off any sensors, because he just pulled off just the clearance enough. And I was like, oh, that's cool. He's done this before. He goes, this will save you some labor. I'm like, dude, you're in my garage. Just let me know when it's done. I'm not going anywhere today. So he knocked on the door. All set, man. I was like, cool.
When I took mine in for the squeaky wheel problem, they let me borrow a Model S for the day. Have you driven a Model S?
I've ridden in one, but I've not driven one.
It is surprisingly heavy compared to the Model 3 is so nimble compared to that car. It was actually shocking. I figured the Model S is going to be like the Model 3, right? It'll kind of drive the same way. It's just a little bit different style, probably a little bit quicker, whatever. No, man, it was it felt like, I don't know, you can just feel how heavy a car is while you're driving it. It
Yeah.
was way heavier than the Model 3, like shockingly heavier. And of course, they put the Model S in like slow mode, chill. It was locked into chill mode when they hand it out to to people like myself that are like, oh, I'm gonna, it's a rental car or whatever. I'm gonna gas it, you know, accelerate it. People hate when I say gas it when I'm talking about electric cars. But yeah, that was pretty funny. I'm like, oh shoot, it's stuck in chill mode.
I have not. My one of my tech acquaintances, he's been posting. He got the Plaid, and I'm like,
Oh,
I want to ride in that. I said, how is it when he got it? And I texted him. He's like, amazing.
yeah.
He goes, it is stupid. He goes,
Yeah.
I can't help it. He goes, you can't not smile the entire time. You're like,
well, and even the Model 3 is stupid acceleration. Like,
yes.
I never, the only time I ever really hit the accelerator in the Model 3 is when I'm showing it to someone. And that's it. Like, I never do that when I'm driving normally. You know,
it's fun showing people.
That's it. Yeah, it's fun to show off. That's about it.
That's about it.
It's a fun car to drive, though. I actually do highly recommend at least everyone try to drive it at some point, because it's really a fun car. And I just recommend all of these new electric cars coming out are just, I don't know. I love to see this happening. There are some that I think are a little goofy, like the Lucid. Which is just stupid expensive. For, I guess it's a nice luxury car, but it's like ridiculously expensive. And even the Rivians, I mean, the Rivians are very expensive too. They just jacked up the prices on them too, like by like 10 grand or something.
Yeah, Rivians, and then the Hummer is, insanely built. Like I watched a review of that one. I'm just like, what? So I will mention that we are going to wind this down, because I do have, and I don't know if Chris does, but I know I have a few things to do in a little bit here. So we'll give about 10 more minutes of rapid fire questions or so.
Yeah.
Let's see. Do we have a couple that I can go back and look? Someone asked if you'll do a training in London.
I would love to. I haven't been to London since, oh gosh, I was in my 20s. So it's been at least 20 or 25 years since I've been in London. I would do Canada as well. I think that would be great.
Yeah.
I have not been to Toronto before, but I have been to Ottawa and Vancouver, and I very much enjoyed both of those places.
Yeah, they're trying to find the right location for it. Geography. I've never been to London, so I would it's on my to-do. I think London would be cool. Some of those places sound interesting. So,
you know what I thought would be amazing would be to have a meetup of some sort with fans at the Star Wars Edge of the Galaxy in Disneyland. I went there recently. Oh man, I could have spent all day. I mean, it's just a smaller part of Disneyland, right? But I could have spent literally all day long just walking around the Star Wars area of Disneyland, because they have like sort of like AR games that you can play. There's an app that you download, and you can like scan. There's like QR codes on various crates and items spread all throughout the land. So you're collecting items on your app as you're standing in line and as you're just walking around. They have like quote unquote radio signals that you can pick up and decode. There's like you have to play mini games to decode radio signals, and you get like special instructions or special missions from people all through this app, like while you're hanging around in there. And it's just so cool and so well done. I was like a kid in a candy shop running around there, and my wife and kids are there, and they're just going like, come on, this is Disneyland, let's. And I'm like, no, I want to stay here. Like, let's do it. We got to do this, we got to do that. I'm drinking blue milk. I went to the cantina and got a drink just to get in there and get a drink, and like, oh
that's
my
cool.
Gosh, I loved it.
Someone said here, now I can tell Chris I'm happy with the unlimited AT&T SIM. So they think to me, I think last week, and I said, I didn't sell any AT&T SIMs. I guess you had an offer?
So we have a resell. We resell AT&T unlimited SIM cards. It's $119. No throttling and no bandwidth caps at all. And people have been enjoying it. It's just sort of something we decided to do at some point because we were doing some LTE videos. And yeah, a lot of people have taken us on. And it's not putting like food on the plate or anything, but it's a good little, we're happy to refer people to it, and it works really well. And we do we do a lot of work with PepWave and PepLink that works. So it was kind of just went hand in hand with the PepWave and PepLink work that we were doing.
You'd use a lot of those for the failovers.
Yes, right. Or for special use cases. Like one of our guys, Dave Barger, the guy that's teaching the network course with me, he did a lot of work with local police municipalities and stuff. And so he got a lot of experience with the PepWave stuff in police cars and like how all of that works. So,
okay. I'm assuming, Chris, I don't think you do like I do the managed computer services, right?
We do not. No. So we don't do any sort of managed like monthly recurring type of services for customers. We do mostly just like consulting on big network projects, wireless ISP projects, big point to multi-point deployment, stuff like that. And then the phone systems, right? So that's sort of our bread and butter. We thought about maybe doing some MSP stuff, but there's usually... See, the problem with MSP stuff is that it's much better to run an MSP when you can roll a truck to your local area, if you have to, right? It's much more difficult to be a sort of nationwide managed service provider when you can't actually send someone out on site. So we kind of just always stayed out of that business. Now, the MSP work that you do, is it all local Detroit area?
No, we got just about 70 businesses that we're the outside IT for, but a lot of those are co-managed. And so we're working with internal IT teams, but MSP is a broad term. If we narrow down to what we're doing, a lot of this has to do with providing security services, providing audit services for their networks, and the endpoint management, managing patch management, managing security with SentinelOne and Huntress. That's the cybersecurity side of the world I get into a lot. So sometimes someone may call that MSSP, managed security service provider, but I just call it MSP. It's a broad topic based on what you support. We do have a lot of companies here in Detroit area that we support because, like Chris said, you can't be the outside AT and not have boots on the ground. You can use, and I'll throw a name out there, not as an endorsement, just as one of them available. There's places like Field Nation where you can try to find a tech, but everyone will always say I'm not endorsing it because, well, trying to find a tech, it's a hodgepodge of random that will show up. And you're trying to service your client, and it's good, bad, it's a random, and I don't want to deal with it. So we don't use any third-party services. Our target audience is you have to have techs on site, and they don't have to be like the high-end IT person. We have a big storage project we're doing for a healthcare provider. They're tech savvy enough to support their line of business applications. They do not know how to replace the servers. They know how to plug them in. That's all we need. So we're shipping all the servers there and labeling where they need to be plugged in to migrate all their data storage. When we did that project, like the petabyte server, there's internal IT teams, but they weren't specialized in setting up storage at that scale. We know how to set the storage at that scale. So we'll do all the plug it in here, plug it in there. So that's it, managed service provider, but into a niche that we do it in. So
very cool.
What's your opinion on Fedora, Red Hat distros, or Debian? I'm a Debian person all the way myself.
I am too. I used to like CentOS a lot. I kind of moved away from CentOS to Ubuntu, and then now that CentOS is moving to like as a service OS or something, they're like doing some weird cloud OS or something. I don't know. People were not happy with that decision, so I'm kind of glad that I made the shift to Ubuntu a while back. I also just like it's just nice standardizing on a particular distribution because like the package manager and like the sort of nuances of that OS versus having multiple different kinds. But FreePBX is all CentOS based, so we kind of have our. If I'm building a server that's anything not a FreePBX, I use Ubuntu, and otherwise I just use the the CentOS 7 variant.
Yeah, I'm apt-get. I'm so familiar with that. So Ubuntu and Debian are reasonably interchangeable for myself when it comes to a lot of that. And then for the desktop OS, I really like Pop! OS. I'm pretty happy with it. It's Ubuntu with some polish added, so it's not like I'm far off of that. Identical hardware with pfSense and troubleshoot slow VPN transfer speeds. Boy, this is a wild card. Check your ciphers to make sure you're using the optimal ones, which is going to be for 256. I think it's AES GCM if you have support. If you also have the option for Cha-Cha Poly 230, that's built in now to PF Senses 2.6 OpenVPN. But you can sometimes get inconsistent speed because MTUs, packets. One of the comments from the developer, Christian McDonald on WireGuard, was to set the MTU and MSS clamping slightly lower so the MTUs fit within the way your internet provider. There's so many tuning features on this. I don't think there's an easy one-off go-to. Is there, Chris, you think?
Sorry, my wife was calling me, so I was sending her a message saying I am still on a live stream. I did not hear your question.
Troubleshooting PF Sense and OpenVPN transfer speeds, having like slower, inconsistent speeds on a OpenVPN.
Oh, again, it's just one of those things. It could be so many different things. It's also could just be the upload speed. Remember that you're limited to the upload speed on both sides, right? So like, for instance, we were testing an SD-WAN appliance, which is not exactly the same, but it's, you're doing transfers across a WAN. And I'm like, God, I've got like just a brain fart moment. I'm like, I've got a 300 megabit internet connection. Why is this transferring at 20 megabits? I don't understand. And then I'm like, oh, of course, because it's the upload speed on the other side that's the problem, right? And so you just have to factor in everything, and with any troubleshooting, take a step back, look at the whole picture, and then break it into pieces and look at each piece individually, right? Like that's just for anything that you're troubleshooting. That's sort of the way that you can approach it.
Yeah, I actually laughed. Jack Resider had tweeted yesterday. He goes, I always think of myself as the packet. That's how I troubleshoot better. I was like, fair enough. Fair enough.
Be the packet. I like that. That's actually really good.
Yeah, you just walk through all the steps, and especially with firewalls, and I do this all the time. I just like you mentioned earlier, you double NAT them because you got to take the internet out of the equation. What will it do without the external factors? Because once we have established a baseline of it will transfer at this speed with this factor, and if you go back, watch just the testing portion of my Netgate 4100 video. I show the speed difference of if you run a couple extra services on pfSense, those services are write intensive to the drive. So when you run a test at full speed on a VPN, it tests fast. A moment later, it tests slow. Then the load on the pfSense goes up, and you can watch it's still writing the log from what it just saw. So if you run a second speed test, it just dropped and it would lose like 100 megs. It would go from 800 down to 600 while it was catching up with writes. And when the writes would catch up, it would go back up. And by turning off that extra application that was doing all the logging and the write intensiveness, it would stay a more consistent speed. That's why it's so hard. You have to look at everything when we do it. When we do these consulting, so much of our consulting is doing these obvious steps. We've now spilled the secret sauce of what we do.
Oh, you mean Google it?
Oh yeah, we Google it and we set things to default. Like that's
right.
That's the biggest thing we do as consultants is we set things to default because you probably turned every knob and then you didn't document what knob you turned. So the first thing we do, default settings, because troubleshooting what you did is hard.
Yeah, that's right. It's very like in the VoIP world, it's like we'll get a lot of calls where it's like, hey, I have one-way audio. And, 99.999% of the time, one-way audio is related to the firewall. It's related to some sort of NAT issue, usually. And so we'll tell people, well, first question is, do extension-to-extension calls have one-way audio?
Yeah.
Right. Do your local calls have one-way audio? And the answer is usually no. And then we're like, okay, so it's the firewall. So it's when it's traversing that firewall, that's where you're having your problems, or it's NAT settings in the server.
Yep. Probably last question here would be, hey Chris, will you make another video on Ubiquiti or MikroTik configuration?
I don't think I'm going to do any MikroTik. I just am not familiar enough with it. It was such a learning curve to get into a whole new brand of firewall. I will certainly do more Ubiquiti videos. In fact, I'm sort of starting to do some more just basic videos. Like I put one out this week on, hey, this is how you do a static mapping in DHCP with both UniFi and EdgeOS, right? So basically sort of showing like one basic thing that's a good tool to have in your tool belt for any of these products, which is actually kind of interesting. Someone said, what was it? Someone said if you are in UniFi and you set up a static map, I think it was like you can't change the UniFi won't let you change the subnet if you still unless you delete all of the static maps first or something. There was something weird like that where like you have to delete all the static maps in order to make some sort of change that was in there, which, you know, I guess makes sense. But on the other hand, if you it should just allow you to change the subnet, and then those static mappings are now just useless.
Right.
It shouldn't like block you from making changes.
Yeah, UniFi's got some just weird quirkiness in there. I'm happy you're doing a video because people have been bugging me to do one. I'm like, no, I've actually directed them. I said, Chris has some. I don't feel like repeating it. Chris's are accurate. They're on point. I am busy doing some of the other videos.
Yeah.
And there's only one of us. So it's, it's hard sometimes to get every video out there that everybody wants.
Oh yeah. Like I've never done a video on what is it? XGP?
Yeah.
The virtualization stuff. I don't have it. I don't know it at all. So like stick with what you're good at.
Yeah.
Same thing with like,
hard.
With like, I just recently got into 3D printing. I've also recently got into Home Assistant. I'll tweet about things like that. People are like, oh, when are you going to do a Home Assistant video? I'm like, there's so many people out there that do it so much better than I could do it because I'm a noob at it. I'm just learning myself, So yeah, no, we stick to what we know.
Yeah. Because when you're good at it, it's easier to make a video on it too, because I'm just fluid. I know the answer to a lot of these questions because I'm doing it from a consulting standpoint. I'm doing it some videos, and XCPNG and some of the other stuff we're actively using even in my office. So there's a lot of that on there.
Yeah, I will mention already said Node-RED. Yeah, that's another whole thing. People like do some Node-RED videos. It's like, oh man, first I gotta learn it. Then I gotta learn it good enough to teach it. You know what I mean? And it's like, yeah.
Oh yeah. And you're never as wrong as when you're wrong on a YouTube video. So
for sure.
If we get hate comments on accurate videos.
Well, it's either hate comments or you should have done XYZ.
Yeah. Or you should have done this, you should have done this way. And there's all the opinions that fly around out there on there. Someone said, would you consider starting a wireless WISP in your neighborhood? And for me, the answer is no, because as I mentioned earlier, there's cheap internet everywhere here in Detroit. So I couldn't do it competitively at all. WISPs are usually out of a need for internet, not necessarily because we don't like Comcast. As much as Comcast is an unpopular company, the other side of it is when you think about the speed delivery of a WISP, the infrastructure. We have a local municipality, because of the ruralness of it, they wanted to put one in. They started adding up what a tower costs, and they're like, oh, I'm like, yeah.
It's not cheap.
Nope, it's not sure, you could share with your neighbors. You could split your internet, share with your neighbors with a couple point-to-points. I'm not going to call you a WISP, but I'm going to call you cool. You got something done. You shared with your neighbor. But actually doing it, setting up the billing, setting up as a business, there's a lot that goes into it, and the return on it. If people, even as I mentioned, my dad has a WISP. They're not cheap because the service delivery costs. They have a mega tower because it's not flat where my dad is, and so they have the build infrastructure up to the biggest hill and then put a big tower on there, and then in some cases build towers elsewhere. So it's not. It takes a lot. There's the recouping of the cost is hard. So, and
there's also there are a number of government grants that you can get for rural broadband and rural wireless. But those grants are, I wouldn't say they're difficult to get, but there's a lot of hoops that you have to jump through when you get the grant. They have a lot of stipulations, like you have to provide. Because we looked at this for an area in Oregon. The grant was you had to provide free wireless ISP services to any of the local sort of municipality services, like the fire department and the police department. Those had to be free. You also had to provide a certain size structure where you provide free public internet for the area. Like basically you had to build a small shack with a number of computers in there that the general public could go and use for free. On top of the requirements to get the grant had to be there can be no other option in the area. It's so even if there's DSL down the main road, but only down the main road, you might not qualify for the grant. So there's just so much to it, even above and beyond the actual equipment and knowledge, networking knowledge that you have to have, there's a lot of red tape.
Yeah, it's no small venture to take on. So
no,
we'll leave you with that. So we went to 2 hours. I think that's adequate. It's probably longer than we expected. So
we could talk forever, man. We could talk forever. I think Tom, I remember real quick story when Tom and I met up in Pittsburgh, we went out for beers after a day of hanging out, and, we're setting up this wireless at this racetrack. And I feel like you and I were just sitting there drinking beers and talking to each other, like yap, 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 yap. And the other people in the party were just like,
they're ready to go home and go to bed.
Can we leave? It's like 1 o'clock in the morning, and Tom and I are like, blah, 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 blah.
There's so much, we've both been working in tech like forever. So and we always get to work on interesting projects. And it's unfortunate, as Chris said, there's NDAs sometimes, so we can't talk here about some of the projects we do. But boy, they make for great conversation. I really wish we could share with the crowd.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
well, Tom, hey, listen, thanks again for having me on. I appreciate it. And I got to do more live streams. That's my problem. I just never sit down and do it.
Yeah, it's I like doing it, and I committed myself to Thursdays, and here we are. This was episode 273.
Yeah, smart.
It's I don't know. I've just been doing it so long. Even when I've been on vacation or whatever, I still just do it on Thursday. I've done it when I'm not around, even if I do it from my phone and do something short. The goal is to just build that consistency because people kind of expect me to do it. So
sure. No, it's good stuff.
Yep. All right, man. Take care, everyone. Thanks.